Hello and welcome to Food Safety Fridays. My name is Simon Timperley from the International Food Safety and Quality Network. Today we're going to be talking about increasing safety and quality through non-certification assessments, and that's with the chaps next to me, Bill Bremer and Thomas Paraboschi. Yeah, I can see you already. Type in the chat bar. Let us know where you're joining us from. It's really nice to hear from you. And it's great to see all over the world, Vietnam there, Philippines, Texas, Aurora, Illinois. Fantastic. Look at that, gents. And I'm from Manchester in the UK. And Bill, where are you joining us from today?
I'm in Buffalo Grove, Illinois, about 35 miles north of Chicago, due north.
Yeah, and have you got some sunshine shining on your face there through the window?
This is about our fourth day of rain. We had a drought.
Really?
It's now officially over, so we've been getting a lot of rain, which we needed.
And Thomas, where are you joining us from?
So I am joining you from Fort Myers, Florida, which is in southwest Florida. And
it must be sunny there, surely.
It's hot and humid this time of year, very much so.
Very good. Right. Well, everybody's welcome. We'll get started with the presentation shortly. Just a few housekeeping. It is being recorded today. As ever, we'll follow up with an email afterwards with the recording, the slides, and your certificate of attendance, because everybody gets a certificate of attendance, and that's kindly sponsored. That brings us into our kind sponsors of Food Safety Fridays. So I'll play the video ads now, and we're back in a couple of minutes with the presentation. Okay.
The world of food has changed a lot in the last 100 years. But one thing that doesn't change? Ensuring the quality and safe handling of food. No matter what changes are yet to come, we're proud to always be on our clients' side, shaping the future of food today and tomorrow. AIB International, ever onward.
Okay, we're back. Get the slides up now, and then we can get started with the presentation. I'll be back for the Q&A later, but for now I'll hand you over to Thomas and Bill.
Great. Thank you, Simon. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. So before we get started here, I'll tell you a little bit about DNV GL. If you're already familiar with who we are, then this may be for you on So DNV GL is a global quality assurance and risk management company. Our purpose is to safeguard life, property, and the environment. We enable our customers to ensure safety and sustainability of their business. Our company provides classification, technical assurance, software, and independent expert advisory services to the maritime, oil and gas, power, and renewables industries. We also provide certification, supply chain, and data management services to customers across a wide range of industries. DNV GL was founded in 1864 and today operates in more than 100 countries. We firmly believe our work helps our customers make the world safer, smarter, and greener. In the region Americas, which includes both American continents, we have 8 main offices and 39 locations. Today, DNV GL Business Assurance has issued over 12,000 certificates and over 630 employees are working for the company. In the USA, our healthcare business issued accreditations to over 500 hospitals. DNV GL Business Assurance provides certification, verification, assessment, and training services. We certify to quality management, occupational health and safety, food safety, environmental and energy, social accountability, supply chain management, IT and information security standards, and accredit hospitals. Through combined technical, digital, and industry experience, we help our customers build sustainable business performance and ensure trust of their stakeholders. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic impact on the economy, we developed a number of certification and assessment services that help companies to survive and get prepared for post-pandemic operations. Infection risk management with hygiene and anti-contamination measures are already part of companies' HSE policies and related management systems. The severity of the COVID-19 pandemic demands additional, specific, more stringent, and sometimes drastic changes compliant with national and other requirements from key stakeholders. This is the time when hospital-grade infection management is required. Assessment and training by an independent third party provides the necessary proof and builds trust with the public, your customers, employees, and key stakeholders. As you can see here, we also provide crisis management plans, business continuity, online training, supplier qualification during a crisis, working from home assessment protocol, as well as remote auditing. DNV GL Business Assurance is currently working with various live streaming software and performs assessments and audits remotely. Our video solutions allow for stable video, high-resolution images, zooming, and various comment highlights made during the audit process. You can learn more about the technologies and processes we are using by watching our on-demand webinars for industries where remote audits are permitted, and links will be sent with follow-up communication. So let's talk about some of the ways we work with customers in remote auditing. So remote auditing can be used in a number of situations, either fully remote during audits or in a combination. We make sure that the chosen remote audit solution is best suited for your company and comply with internal security policies and regulatory requirements. And now I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, Bill.
Tom, thank you very much. And thank you, Simon. Thank you, everyone. Glad to be presenting this topic to you about third-party assessments that factor into how we're continuing to work through COVID, right? Because things don't always stop, and the remote audits help, but a lot of the global auditing has been suspended temporarily. Who is Kestrel? So we consider ourselves a leading consulting advisory firm. We've been heavily involved in all levels of the food compliance industry, and we work across the board in FSMA, foreign supplier verification, intentional adulteration, food defense, the major programs. Basically, we're a provider of third-party food program assessments. We work on internal controls, and then we certainly support, excuse me, food safety culture change, because we work on an interactive or much more proactive way, I should say, with our clients. Food is one of our major industries. However, we also focus on any high-risk industries, oil and gas, chemical, and other ones of that nature. So the objectives of my presentation piece is understand how to protect yourself and your company through assessment of major programs. Discuss the issues and impacts and actions of preparing food safety validation of key programs to ensure compliance requirements. excuse me, highlight benefits of conducting third-party audits of food safety assessments with primarily local resources that can be on site, and it can have both the physical audit or assessment element as well as the program, the documentation, and discuss methods and strategies for planning and completing third-party assessment validation. In the past, we had major programs that led up to having a food safety management system. We now have more significantly large standards that have the different elements of these. They have historically, the third-party audit or assessment was in place prior to these major programs. Enlisting outside firm maximizes an unbiased assessment, so you can get a third-party assessment based on that will help you to confirm your compliance, not just for you but for your customers as well. This also provides an opportunity to have specific focused audits for major programs, which we call them. It provides flexibility in scheduling as well, because it doesn't have to be a multi-day or a very long process to do. It can focus on the major programs. Limits the disruption of business just based on the amount of time it takes. And then the third-party arrangements provides an opportunity to work with more local resources without having to, have a significant amount of transportation to get, the different level of certification auditors to your location. So the major programs that we tend to focus on, and there's more, tend to be HARP-C, HACCP preventive controls, basically, FSMA in the U.S., or for foreign suppliers to the U.S., CGMPs, which used to be GMPs, now they have to be current, right? Building and equipment assessments, and then supplier programs. Additionally, we focus on things like the training area and internal audits. Recent programs to consider too is intentional adulteration and food fraud, which are growing in development. These focused food safety assessments include regulatory, customer requirements, and industry standards. Everything, of course, to comply must be up to date at all times. These changes must be certified and validated as well. And then the third-party assessment provides a means of confirming compliance specific to key programs, or in some cases, customer requirements. This level of assessment can be scheduled on a more flexible basis using qualified resources, and can readily be provided, provide an assessment report that can be used to prove evidence of compliance. Provides responses and closing of corrective actions. So it goes through kind of the classic assessment process in findings to lead to improvement through corrective actions. Supports customer and certification requirements. Provides, again, the audit report as a record, as well as confirms the programs and current implementation of any changes, which is a key issue because there's so much going on in the world of change with regard to what the market is going through in food particularly. So third-party assessments can be scheduled readily. They previously were not uncommon. They were very common prior to major certification programs. They are coming back somewhat due to COVID because companies now have to determine how to keep their programs up to date when some of the certification audits have been postponed from a physical standpoint, or even the recertification. As a focused activities, these assessments can respond more specifically to customer needs or areas that they think they need to improve upon. Provides more direct coverage they can be focused on, greater than a longer, broader type of a audit process. Can be supported by the assessment report, which is accepted both from a regulatory standpoint and certification standpoint as part of evidence of compliance, and is encapsulated to allow just a better understanding of the area that is being assessed. The HARPC assessment report, I'm calling it. The names are changing for this. So the original name for preventive controls with FDA was HARPC, Hazard Analysis and Risk-Based Preventive Controls. This audit report can be based on a customized work plan to ensure compliance and show evidence. It's according to the updated requirements, regulatory-wise, and adopted by the major standards, aligned and supports internal audit for this level of verification, and provides direct input into corrective actions. So with greater focus, the idea here too is that you would have a greater idea of the strengths and weaknesses of your programs and what you need to do to ensure that they're fully up to date and current. And response provides means of direct program updates. So it tends to be a shorter process than some of the larger, longer audits. The assessment report shows findings directly to the comprehensive requirements. Issues can be closed based on internal determination and records, pretty much your CAPA. It feeds into that, specifically for this, basically the HARPC HACCP area. Results provide evidence of the assessment and the CAPA implementation process and can be completed and delivered more directly with the food safety team of the organization that's undergoing the assessment. Additionally, it can be verified internally, provides a record of the corrections, can meet regulatory requirements as well. So they're geared to meet both industry certifications, customer and regulatory. And it's evidence aligned with the internal audit program that tends to be an area that a lot of companies need to ensure that they're following. Supports validated compliance. So that process will, from the work plan to what's being reviewed, will validate the level of compliance or what has to be done to validate compliance. Provides a means of confirm timing of program updates. So if you're trying to update based on your food safety plan, food safety management system, this can help to do that when the larger scale audits are not being conducted for the full programs. It is a basis to determine the next scheduled assessment as well. So it can help keep time with regard to update of programs. HARPC and HACCP is a key one, typically on an annual review and update basis. It'll help you to meet that. And the process can be more readily conducted with local resources. The next major program we talk about is GMPs, or now CGMPs. Basically, this leads into confirming all the programs are complete and up to date. Provides a verification of the updates. So management of change and the update of the continuous improvement side of the programs need to be assessed and then verified. Validates programs are documented. So it also provides that gap element of are all programs that should be in place. Verification audit can be scheduled on a more flexible time frame. Qualified resources can be sourced to do this, and they might be different than some of the global certifying body level certifications, because there are other means of doing that, such as being ISO 9001 certified as a provider. Supports the updating of programs, which is, again, one of the bigger areas that companies struggle with. What we're seeing with COVID is companies are falling behind on what they're doing internally, depending on their level of work. So this type of third-party assessment can help to keep everything up to date and not be too far behind. Focused audit provides a fresh look at programs. So because this is a focused look at the programs, there's more that can be assessed about the programs and what needs to be done with them, and confirms that the programs and improvements, through an assessment report. A lot more based on what needs to change versus what the gap is. CGMP compliance extends to FDA Section 117. You're fully allowed to use a third-party assessment to update your programs. Aligns with the industry standards as well, and most customer requirements. And then under FSMA and CGMPs, they must be maintained as part of the compliance of the food safety plan. So any of the changes are critical. The updates are critical. You have a little bit more room in FSMA, but it's pretty much best to do it on an annual basis without stretching out your assessments too far, and provides an independent verification. So again, you get fresh look at programs, focused report on the programs being assessed for better direct program analysis, and then clearer source of improvements to implement. A lot of times these are much more logical type improvements, so they're easier to grasp, understand, and implement. And then the focused assessment provides a means of targeted review, direct analysis of each program, as I mentioned, which is really key. A lot of times it doesn't happen so much in larger scale audits. Verification level review and improvement, which can be readily done. Typically on these third-party assessments, you can convert the gaps into action and correction much more readily, and confirms the availability or the applicability of the program for all levels of compliance. So whether it's internal, customer, regulatory, or certification. Bottom line, can be more readily completed by local resources, are well established within the food safety world for acceptance, allows for the review to be concentrated in key areas, and the strong level of expertise in determining program effectiveness with qualified resources for conducting the third-party assessment, and more direct to corrective actions. So first two major programs as an example. The third, I think, is really important because it's one we're seeing a lot of issues with, and it's building and equipment assessment. So it supports the commissioning process, both from a legal standpoint as well as a customer requirement or industry certification level. It's imperative. Typically, building elements are not a major focus, at least in detail, of a lot of the audits that are being conducted on the full programs. Equipment is not always a strong focus either, as programs have become, the documented programs have become the focus versus the condition of the equipment and the effectiveness of the equipment and the food safety aspects of the equipment. So it provides improvement and correct risks that are identified in the process. I mean, we run into some things where still the sanitation is very difficult on some equipment, and we'll point those out to improve the cleaning and sanitation program for compliance. And the same thing with building elements that might be of risk. It provides a concentrated review, typically not part of the more broader food safety audits. You're able to drill down into areas like maintenance practices and improvements. And it provides a perspective of the physical plant that may not be covered in a year-to-year audit process. Following initial certification to a customer industry standard, a lot of times the building elements are not a significant focus once they've been, any issues have been resolved. So the focused building and equipment assessment provides a unique opportunity that may be a strong focus for your food safety management system. Provides attention and a better basis to update the state of the physical plant and justify improvements, provides a planned improvement and change process, and can help address things like hygienic design, which we're seeing a lot of out there. This is even pre-COVID, where companies were really reassessing their hygienic design because they were having too much downstream contamination identified in their plants. And it also ensures the integrity of the physical plant and site assessment conditions, which I think about 70% of the plants in the food plants in the U.S. were built pre-1970, oddly enough. Many of these are very dated and they don't meet the current requirements. So whether it's these or other newer plants, it's important to keep them assessed and determine what the plan is to make sure that the proper corrections and modifications are implemented. And then the supplier program assessment. It's another area where sometimes these, just due to the scope of the full food safety management systems audits, they're glossed over. And, historically, we've not been able to maintain suppliers based on, the past record of buying from them with no significant issues. However, a lot can be missed. So what the whole idea here is to take a look at the criterion rating of suppliers, highlight performance assessment and trending, which leads to a comprehensive program update, much more solid supplier program. It's generally not a strong focus where a broader view of the suppliers that are qualified, why they're so qualified, are in place. So it allows the ability to look at the pros of some suppliers that you want to keep. They're good based on their record, and on a more detailed basis, and the cons if suppliers are not performing well, in a process to deal with those to keep the supplier programs up to date. And then another area is training assessments. Prior to FSMA in the US, training was a big issue because a lot of times it was very basic without a lot of records. So the training is an established food program for obviously CGMPs as well as your food safety management system overall. The casual natures moved to a more heavily record-based training. Programs are always not consistent in what they provide. Sometimes training makes it difficult because the idea is if we find problems, we will retrain. We don't necessarily assess the overall system and determine how can we provide more knowledge and education versus just training and getting kind of the rubber stamp. The focused assessment provides for the effectiveness of the training, drills down to job level, identifies other options that you may have versus that rubber stamp, and compared to either computer-based training or group training, there are means of doing less timely training and verifying people are fully understanding what their job is to ensure food safety, regardless of level. Leads to a perspective of improvement opportunities as well. A lot of times if things go wrong, the first thought is it's a training issue, not a process issue. We'd say, no, it's a process issue and training can be the solution, and provides a program assessment that is generally not a strong priority in the way that the bigger audits and assessments are done. Training assessment focuses on is a unique opportunity for improvement. Updates can be based on a broader level of observations. Provides a planned process, much more focused on specifically on training versus checklists. Can address culture and language barriers, which a lot of times are the biggest issues in the market today. Companies are still struggling with that and how to get around those. Helps determine more effective and timely improvement. Leads to more timely level of training based on observations, and mentoring is a key area to think about too, because that leads into the last bullet, being able to support food safety culture through education. And that still lacks in some of the computer-based training and the way the training is delivered in food safety, where people really are just learning to react versus learning to understand and maintain effectively based on what their job is. And then third-party assessment evidence provides virtually anything you need from an evidence standpoint based on the documentation, issues, vulnerabilities and controls to the food safety management systems of the organizations being assessed. It aligns with internal audit updates and provides continuous improvement. So it helps with the internal audit struggles that companies have, because it can consolidate within the area of the major program, and then you can get credit for your internal audits for customer requirements, regulatory, as well as industry certification audits. Means that all program sites and procedures to be audited 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year outside a leap year, and it enables an operations to be verified for all the conditions of production, distribution, and release of product. They also provide detailed records, and including the timing of them, and corrective and preventive action management. Root cause analysis is easier to derive from these type of audits because they're more focused. Ultimately can be applied to all food safety program elements. So you can break it down to all elements. We just use some examples in this presentation. And they also provide you with the records you need to support evidence of compliance, corrections, management of those, and any resource issues and such. These records must be maintained, and these third-party assessments provide those and supports the process for updating objectives for management review. The documentation is a key with them, and they also focus on areas like management of change, which is another weak area in a lot of programs. How you do that literally creates a bridge for management of change. And it's accepted to verify facilities' continuous commitment to food safety and continuous improvement. And that's all I have. I'm Bill Bremer. Here's my contact information. I'm going to turn back to Tom. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. So now let's talk a little bit about traceability and digital assurance, something that we're seeing more and more of. Our companies are looking to these tools to increase their safety and quality and using them in conjunction with their non-certification assessments. So, we've seen really an evolution, all of us, of the supply chain. It's gone from what was traditionally a more linear supply chain to a matrix, with many more suppliers now involved. And with more complexity comes new challenges, more risks, and a greater need to trust those in your supplier network. And that's where the manifest of trust lies. So historically, consumer trust has tied with brands, but that's changed. What we've seen in the last 5-10 years, and especially today, is consumer trust has shifted to the products. And to be more specific, we can use McDonald's as an example. They've seen a shift in their customer trust from their brand to their products. Customers care about what goes into making their products possible. They care about how it's made, where it's sourced from. McDonald's really had to look at their supply chain strategy and adapt that. They needed to look at how they could update the quality of their products. And I think you'll notice that if you get one of their products today, like their quarter pounder here in the United States, it tastes better than it used to because now they use fresh beef and not frozen patties. But in order to do this, they really had to make a change to their entire value chain, which leads people to ask questions on both sides of the aisle. Consumers and suppliers are looking to their products. Are they honest? What does this label actually mean? Is this brand promise true? And then on the other side, you have brands which are struggling to communicate that information to their customers. And this is where DNV GL can come in. How do we ensure that truthful and impartial content of a product's information have been between businesses and consumers? There's a trust gap there. And we've been in the business of procuring that truth for over 150 years. Historically, we've done that with boots on the ground, with our auditors who have industry experience and are familiar with assessment standards and criteria. But now we do that with another degree of efficiency and detail. Today, we've combined our auditors with technology. By combining our subject matter experts' industry experience with the real-time and automated digital capacity, we're able to verify actions taken and deliver them to customers or others in their supplier network. That information can come through IoT sensors, beacons, NFC chips that are verified by auditors in the field. And one of the technologies we can use to store that information is blockchain, to guarantee the data cannot be altered at a later time. And I know blockchain sounds scary because it gets talked about as a solution for all types of problems. But for us, it's a storage container. It's where we can help lock data in a place and time. And so we can all be on the same page about blockchain. I want to introduce you to my friend Sunny Liu, who can give us a simple and a little bit humorous explanation.
I have a way to describe what is blockchain. Okay, so put yourself in a very specific scenario. You want to say "I love you" to some girl, but you only say "I love you" to the girl alone, without any witness. So that's actually a central system. because once you wanted to deny what you said, nobody can endorse that, right? So if you want to say I love you to a girl with your friend as a witness, this we call the central system with a backup. So if you want to lie about that, like deny what you said, you also need to convince your friend to lie with you, lie for you. So that's a central system with a backup. So if you want to say I love you to a girl, but with random and multiple witness, you don't know them, but they are all listening to you, that's blockchain. So if you want to deny what you said, all of the random people will prove what you said, and you cannot deny that. So that's how blockchain works.
So I like this because it's very simple, like the way we use blockchain. So let me show you one of the ways. So my story is a blockchain-powered application that allows consumers to see the truth of what is behind a product. Whatever the story is you want to tell, whether that's authenticity, quality, sustainability. We did this recently with a winery. There's a lot that goes into making wine, its story, its quality, its authenticity. From a consumer perspective, it's pretty simple. They can scan the QR code on the bottle and read the entire story and the truth behind the product. But what goes on behind the QR code is all the data points collected through the process, from farming to getting to the end consumer. For example, the soil data, the energy consumption, the grape origin data, the bottling process, etc. Each of these is collected and verified to prove the authenticity, gaining that customer trust in their product. One of the things about my story is it allows you to showcase the elements important to your customer, the authenticity, the sustainability, the proof of quality, whatever that is. That information can get stored and verified in blockchain, like, for example, the wine bottle. And while my story focuses on consumer information, blockchain has a lot of use for digital assurance and storing data for other means. So maybe you're trying to get audit transparency or food safety or reducing counterfeit goods. They may not have a fun or exciting story to share, but that doesn't mean the data isn't incredibly valuable. So a lot of our customers living in the middle of a supplier matrix ask us, well, I like my story, but do you have anything that gives me all of the data without the story? And the answer is yes, we do. And that's where we have Toolchain. Toolchain is basically blockchain in a box. What it allows us to do is add the blockchain infrastructure to your business process with verification and limited intrusion to business continuity. So let me give you an example. So right now, hygiene is quite popular for obvious reasons. One of our clients is a mask manufacturer, and the example to the right is a production checklist. The data being collected can all be collected by a user through a cell phone, tablet, an IoT device. You can see that in the table, that there's various types of way the data can get collected. While this might be a checklist for mass production, when you look at the steps of the process, it all looks very similar to other types of manufacturing. For example, you could use this for food production. You can take your steps, your process, take that data, have it verified, digitized, and locked in blockchain, securing that information. I'll pause here for moving towards questions.
Have we finished then, Thomas, or are you?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, then. Okay. Let's switch our webcams on and then pick up questions. Okay. Finish the slides. Okay. Thanks for that. We had some interference on the sound. I don't know quite where that's coming from, but anyway, we managed to get through. Martha had asked this question: can we have an example of direct analysis program? Does that make sense to you, Bill or Thomas?
It does from the focus third-party assessment standpoint. So that's kind of the way that works, a much more closer, review of a particular program area.
Okay, Martha, a big issue of tracing raw materials along the supply chain is the refusal of some companies, businesses to disclose information. Any tips, please?
I think that issue of particularly internationally, where there might be a distributor ultimately providing the product, and the need particularly for FSMA and compliance of customers to go back to the source. And certainly the focused audit can help draw attention on that and come up with solutions on how to get full disclosure of product back to the manufacturer. I mean, it's a FSMA requirement, it's a foreign supplier verification program requirement, still continues to be a struggle. And we work with a lot of companies on that as well, and a focus on the supplier qualification program to help lead into getting the broader level of where the original source of product came from.
Okay, Abdullah, yeah, it's off topic, that question. If you want to ask that, just go to the IFSQM forum and post a topic. You'll get plenty of answers about ISO 22000. Any further questions on this topic for Thomas or Bill while they are here? Anybody?
I got a question maybe for Thomas. Okay. So that question of authenticating the source of a material, a particular material, it could be in any domestic area or internationally. What would the digital assessment capability of blockchain offer there to have that full supply chain visibility?
So what some companies have worked with us on is, taking some of those assessments that we're currently doing with their supply chain, taking that standard or scope that they have, and then we can work with them to sort of digitize that process and take that verification and that information that they have from those suppliers and get that information into the blockchain. So there's tools that are available to allow their suppliers to be able to provide that information directly, and then we can work with them on verification and authenticity of it as well. So they want to have that sort of immutable record, which is benefit to their supplier as well as to them to have that information that way.
Yeah, it probably could be as simple as a question of confirm the source or sources of this material, get a response, and then it would be able to be applied into the blockchain system.
That's right, exactly. And I think that communication piece is important, right, for companies, that they, that their supply chain, their network can see that verification is taking place and have that information available. And that's one of the benefits of using a digital assurance method.
Yeah. So also, I mean, I thought of this after we've talked more and more about the digital system and blockchain. What's on blockchain could also be a source of being able to do an assessment, right? Mm-hmm. The presence of certain information and maybe the lack of other information.
That's right.
Okay. Just a question from Walter. Specifically on FSMA, you mentioned it earlier, Bill. Is it mandatory for one to attend preventive control qualified individual, or can experience suffice?
Experience can suffice for everything, and experience a lot of times is broadened up to the years of experience, how much you've had, to what level you were doing things. You're an administrator or director or manager, or you're just an operative person. But then the record of moving up based on your experience. Education's a key area as well. So if you have the pedigree education, you have the experience, you've run and managed certain programs, those all add up to being a qualified individual.
Yeah. Albert, it's a bit of a broad one, but maybe you can help. For companies starting on certification journey, what tips do you have for startup timeline?
That's a great question, and companies struggle with it. Even big companies that are moving into from different food types, for either certification or FSMA compliance, you really need to do an internal assessment, and you need to do a strategy based on that. And to fully develop an entire program can take anywhere from more than 6 months to more than a year, depending on the size and complexity. So doing a gap assessment, which is part of the third-party assessment, would help to do that. And then companies that are doing gap assessment should be able to contribute to the timetable and the strategy, which could include what type of preparation the food safety management system leadership needs to have so that they can do their job, and then the rollout of both communication, objectives, and policy, as well as that time frame of when you're going to accomplish things, are all very, very important. So they all have to be put together. It's easier said than done, but it's a pretty established process of gap assessment to determine what programs need to be developed.
Yeah, very good. And Hake, how about blockchain application in the meat industry as digital assurance program? Any knowledge or experience of that, Tom or Bill? Blockchain in meat? Is Tom there? As if,
you hear me?
You seem to freeze then for a minute, Tom.
Oh, am I back? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened, but yeah. So actually, we have a client in the meat industry out of.
Yeah, it's. I think Thomas has got a connection problem there. Is that right? Have you seen that as well, Bill?
Yeah, I could maybe answer a little bit until Tom comes back. In meat, and particularly in the U.S. USDA, your issues are you do have inspections, and you do have things like NRs, and there's our public record of these type of things that can probably be used in blockchain just as well as assessments and audits. You know, hopefully good news, but that's a basis for blockchain information.
Okay, thanks, Bill. And Eric, how about an example for an audit of a non-certified grated coconut supplier? Keep in mind, this supplier is starting from scratch.
Yeah, the approach we would take is we would help them, or the third-party assessment would work to help them to determine their physical plant capabilities and qualifications to making and grading the product safely, controlling it. Coconuts are interesting because you can get into various levels of allergen contamination that are not coconuts with those other products, as well as you still need the whole suite of food safety programs. If it's in the U.S., FSMA driven. If it's in the EU, European Commission driven. If it's in a certain supply chain of a multinational company, some might be based in Europe or elsewhere or the U.S., you need to determine those needs and build your program around those. And to do that, you have to determine what you have and then what gaps exist that you have to address.
Yeah. Okay. Alvaro just made a comment. Auditing suppliers is the best tip because you build a relationship with them, if that's possible. Yes. Bruce, question for Thomas. How far off is interoperability of the various blockchain solutions so that it really can be widely useful?
So hopefully my connection is better now. So I think it really, the answer kind of depends. It's a good question. So for us, we work with VeChain. That's the blockchain provider that we work with. And what's unique about VeChain and why this partnership has been working so well is that it's a hybrid, meaning that it's a closed blockchain with the ability to have permission access. So for us, we're able to integrate with our clients so that they can access the blockchain for that information in a way that is a bit different than a closed blockchain like IBM, which is going to work a bit differently from that. And I can actually answer the question about the meat earlier. I apologize, I wasn't able to answer that. So we do have a client out of Australia who is using our My Story solution, the blockchain, for authenticity of their meat. So that way consumers can scan a QR code to guarantee that that meat is in fact, what they expect it to be.
Yeah. Okay. Tran and asking, some suppliers refuse to confirm regulation compliance. How do we solve this issue?
It's a great question. There's a little trickery in there. It's getting them to attest that they're meeting the requirements without like a full disclosure. So confirm that you meet all requirements, and you could list things out. Ultimately, you shouldn't qualify them as a supplier if they're not providing information. You couldn't get through foreign supplier qualification in the U.S. with it. So, and that other person that mentioned, audit your suppliers. If you can do an on-site audit, that's the other way of getting it, because you can add kind of that whole declaration issue by saying you have this, you have this, you have this, and getting it signed, confirming that they have it, and that way you get that record.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Albanos, how can you ensure a good audit for fresh French beans in a company?
Yeah. Blockchain. I mean, basically, you need to do an audit, and then you have to look at the record, including any of the, probably for the beans, it could be FDA if it's like low acid canning, it could be USDA if it's harvesting and other types of processing like frozen and things. So you might have dual jurisdiction, but those inspections, at least in the US and in Europe, are available. The other things we look at is customer audits, how well companies have done, and then really their record in the marketplace. So there's a number of things you can do to do that. Buying the product and sampling it as well.
Okay. Any further questions? Just Tran says, many thanks for the advice. Any further questions? I think Abdullah, I did ask a question earlier, but then, well, let's see if you can add anything to it. How can we make declaration after self-assessment sequence of declaration and be approved?
Yeah, declaration is part of it. It's not the whole thing. So declaration is a way to get, and it's legal. It's an advertisement, at least in the U.S. and probably Europe. You know, in the U.S., it's Federal Trade Commission. You get a declaration of compliance, which is different than a letter of guarantee or CFC. That is literally that company attesting that they're providing product that is pure, unadulterated, lacks contamination of heavy metals and pesticides and things like that. So it's part of the process. It's not the whole process, but it really supports ensuring that you're sourcing safe and unadulterated food product.
Okay, another question from Walter. To successfully use blockchain in supply chain, is it mandatory to buy a software?
So I would say no, just based on our own experience with the clients we work with. So the toolchain program that I was showing earlier, that's essentially supply chain in a box. So that allows companies to be able to work with the blockchain in a way without having to have any special additional software for that.
Okay. Abdullah says, thank you. Any further questions? We've got a few minutes left. If you have a question for Bill or Thomas. Have you got any further questions of Thomas, Bill?
Kind of a general one. As blockchain is evolving for many uses, how would you, if you were going to apply a maturity model to it in food compliance, where would you say that the blockchain is in being able to have a broader use in the marketplace for confirming supply chain and the adequacy of the members of the supply chain?
That's a good question. So, I think that it's the adoption rate has increased over time. I think there's still a ways to go, but I think where it's becoming most beneficial within supply chain is the fact that once the record is there, it can't be altered in the future. And so areas like traceability is where companies are starting to see the value of this, where if they can get that information and be able to store it in some way that becomes immutable, I think that's where adoption, where we'll see blockchain in terms of supply chain continue to grow.
Is it leading into legal defense when maybe regulators or even customers are claiming that maybe a company didn't do everything appropriately? Can that supply chain information, because it can't be changed, support their legal defense?
Yes. So we've seen it in the healthcare industry, working with hospitals that have utilized it to put records there so they can verify that information was there. We've seen it take place in sanitation. So again, to document and prove the authenticity of certain practices that have taken place, be able to limit recalls and things like that. So yeah, I think it's becoming more valuable in other areas.
Okay, another question now from Albanos. If you are appointed as a team leader in food industry, what are the major issues for controlling blockchain within a company?
It's a good question, and I think you'd want to have top-down sort of approval in the organization. I think you'd want to have executive buy-in in order to be able to work through and have that within the organization. So my recommendation is really kind of a top-down support of it.
Yeah, in the food world, you have the objectives, and then you have the policy issues, and then you have your various program assessment verifications or validations. Blockchain could be one of those. And then maybe not the senior executive, but the operational management level management review would be a way of managing that. But likely that information would have to be elevated based on whatever the reports are up to the board level, internal controls, and that level of attention.
Apologies to Abdullah for pronouncing your name incorrectly, but I have to say my name isn't Simone. It's Simon. Anyway, Alexander, how does blockchain apply to SMEs, small, medium enterprises, primarily in the food industry?
So I think that where we looked at our tool chain as an easy way for adoption within companies. I think it can go to small and medium sized businesses as well. Something else that DNV has done for a few years is put our certifications within blockchain as well. So those organizations can have those certifications very easily available for their clients. And also, again, the fact that it's stored there, it's immutable, it can't be altered at all. So they have that proof.
Well, thank you, Abdullah. That's the first time I've been said I love you on a webinar. Who'd have thought it, on such a subject? But anyway, thank you. Any further questions for Bill or Thomas as we approach the hour mark? Just thank you for sharing your expertise. Really appreciated. From Patricia Lever, thanks. Thank you from Dia. Very thankful audience. Any further questions? Oh, Dawn. Rather large one. Bear with me. Blockchain requires initial resource and startup costs to get all the necessary data mapped to flow into a blockchain, right? And wouldn't it also require ongoing data mapping management, right? Is manpower, resource, and cost an obstacle? How do customers wanting to use blockchain convince suppliers to commit resources and costs for this endeavor?
That's a great question. I don't know if I can answer all of that at this point, but I can say for sure. I think you're right, Don. I think it does require a lot to, in terms of changes within the organization. I think what we can certainly do is I'd be happy to sort of follow up and have a more specific conversation. If it's something that she's looking for within her organization or evaluating it.
Yeah. Thomas and Bill's contact details are in the presentation that will be circulated afterwards, so you can pick up on that perhaps later. Okay. Right then. We'll leave it there, gents. Thanks for your time today, very much, Thomas and Bill. Do we have another question? Just in time. Can you see that one from Manoj? Always happens when you're wrapping it up and then another question comes in and you don't know what to do. We are manufacturing the product for other customers and all the materials are supplied by them only. Is a supplier audit to be conducted for them from the manufacturer?
Definitely. You have to set up the conditions, could include an audit, should include an audit, but it should be just like any other supplier qualification, because you're bringing their product in, supplied by them, probably to make their product. So it's kind of a catch-22 that you're going through. And the better companies that are doing that will push back and not accept product that doesn't meet spec. And they won't, they won't budge on it unless it's an act of some higher level decision making, waivers and things like that.
Okay, and Hayek, how it is possible to be involved in blockchain audit assessment process?
So I think that it just depends on what what's your situation, on what your needs are, what you're looking for from the blockchain. I think once you can kind of figure out what your goal is in terms of, what are the challenges you're seeing with the audit process that you want to see if blockchain can overcome, I think you can figure out, what's the best way to utilize it, because there is quite a bit of flexibility in terms of, what kind of information you want to put in the blockchain, what makes sense, what may not make sense. So I think you kind of want to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. Right. Can a non-certification audit be considered as an outsourced service for a certified company?
Definitely. You have to qualify your resource, just like you would your qualified people in your organization leading your food safety teams. So you're going to want to have the credentials. Most companies will issue really a legally binding declaration of a statement of qualifications, which could include their history in doing the work, the background and education of their primary people, what they do to provide resources, that might be more on the ground level assessment level, and then how do you manage all the information that comes in. Basically, the third-party assessors do technical, the better one should do technical review as well. So having 2 or 3 other higher level or subject matter expert level people involved in assessing findings.
Right, we are going to leave it there. So thanks very much for your time, sharing time with us today, Bill and Thomas. Really appreciate it, and some great comments and engagement from the audience. Okay.
Thank you, Simon and everyone.
Yeah.
Have a great.
Thank you, Simon.
No worries. Have a great weekend, guys. Thank you, and hope to see you again on a webinar with us in the near future.
Okay, great.
Okay. Okay, ladies and gents, that was Bill and Thomas, and this is me, Simon Timpley, from IFSQN. I've forgot to load the certificate. I can't do that now. I need to do that in the admin section before the webinar starts. So what I'll do is I'll send the email. Just give me an hour or so. I'll follow up with an email and include the recording, the slides, the certificate. You'll have the contact details for Bill and Thomas. So if you need to get in touch with them, you can do. I've enjoyed my time with you as ever here today. I'll see you in the next one in a couple of weeks' time. Have a great weekend and stay safe, everyone. Bye.